talk a little bit about JokeDAO, what it is, and like super quick,
Cool.
like 30 seconds.
Jokerace actually is it's now called. So I'm David. I'm co-founder of a project called Jokerace. It is a tool for anybody to be able to launch contests on any EVM chain, and you can use it for anything from governance to bounties to prediction games to hackathons to grants to putting the Bachelor on chain. So lots of different options for how you can structure these contests to build your community and build community engagement. I also write at davidphelps.substack.com. I shitpost on Twitter. I think that's good enough. I don't know. Anything else we need to know? All right.
So now, yeah, let's dive into the tough ideas.
Let's go
like
hard.
as Taki
Yeah.
said, tokenless governance. Tokenless governance is a super interesting subject that we've never really explored, at least in our
Cool.
ecosystem.
I just basically asked the question, so I would love to hear everybody's thoughts about how we can go about that outside of the traditional model that we have a token in a DAO or a community or a tokenized community, and we try to please everybody by doing stuff, paying people for stuff, and keeping people happy. So how do we go about that? And is a token really necessary in that equation, as we've seen so far in the majority of cases?
Yeah, so the context here, right, is I think everyone's referring to this thing I wrote at Jokerace called post-token future. And the idea of a post-token future is you don't necessarily need a token for your governance. So, there's a lot of reasons for that. But then I think the question is, well, what does it look like without a token? And, let me give you some examples. Like Blackhand, amazing esports DAO, just, came in third at Apex Legends, one of the biggest esports tournaments in the world. And they did that because their DAO is made up of top players who all wanted to collectivize so they could be able to share, the income together. So instead of having that, all go to an extractive overlord who owns the team, they own the team and they get to share it with themselves. If they had just let any token holder play in the tournament, do you think they would have gotten in third, at Apex Legends? Like, no, it's like, it makes sense because it's a talent collective of the top people there. Boys Club, no token, right, is killing it right now with events everywhere, and it's all based on vibes. They really are curating a community based on who's going to be valuable, who's going to be able to contribute meaningfully, who's going to, who they want to be, part of the squad. And, there's always issues with permissioning, etc. But the nice thing about this space is you can just fork it, Like if someone doesn't take you in and you don't like it, go create your own community with your own standards. And that's how things should be done. And so, I think there actually are models for what tokenless DAOs look like. And they're actually the most successful DAOs a lot of the time as well. And so, I've stopped using the word DAO. I use the word like modular community now because DAO has just come to mean too many different things. But yeah, within that framework, there's all sorts of different ways that you might set up, your structure. So what we built at Jokerace is like an allow list system for who can submit to a contest and then who can vote in a contest. And so, every contest is really these two periods, a submission period and a voting period. So if you imagine traditional DAO governance, the submission period, you would submit two proposals saying, yes, we agree, no, we don't, right? And the prompt for that contest would be whatever the full proposal was. And then the voting period, everyone would go and vote yes or no, right? And so that would be, you would replicate traditional DAO governance using us for that. But the much more exciting thing is like when you start to invert it and you start to imagine, well, maybe we let tons of people, submit and only a few can vote. And then you have a hackathon, right? Tons of people can submit projects or grants process. Tons of people can submit applications for grants or Bachelor on chain. Tons of men can go and say why they want to date this woman. And then on the other side, you just have like a jury, right, of 5 people, 10 people who vote. And so we let you customize it completely. But the main way that we let you customize it is through these allow lists. And so those allow lists, literally just a CSV. It's just addresses in column A, voting power in column B. And then we put that into a Merkle tree in a smart contract, and it's fully on chain. And so you can do full on-chain voting all the things that you've done in your favorite DAOs on any, really, basically any L2 you want, and you can do all of this, right, without any token necessary. And so, I wouldn't say that what would be built is anti-token. You could still make tokens the basis of your allow list, and that's totally fine. You could also do all sorts of new things with that. You could make tokens the basis of your allow list, but it's the duration of time you've held a token rather than how many tokens you hold. And now it's about, okay, who's been involved in our project the longest, right? That they've held these tokens the longest. That's the basis. Or you could get rid of tokens completely. And if you're like a DeFi project, and so we have a DeFi project that's going to be using us for governance, and it's like they're going to do the amount that you've deposited into the DeFi protocol times the duration that you've had those deposits, right? And so it's like, okay, this is really complex, but like, what does it mean? It means like, well, one, at any given moment when they're making a decision, it's going to whoever the current most active users are, who are currently providing liquidity, right? It's not someone who used to provide it to get a token, now has power and isn't doing shit for the protocol. It's actually someone who's like there, right, and is active. It also means that the OGs are getting the most power, so you can't flash attack this. You can't just suddenly go deposit a ton of money into the protocol and suddenly, assume that you can take it over and flash attack the treasury. Can't happen, right? And it means there's an incentive. There's an incentive in place that you want to keep depositing in order to accrue more governance power over time. And so it's actually like aligning their incentives with, their users as well. Like that's what tokenless governance, right, can look like.
I really like the DeFi model, and just because that was the one you brought up last, I'd like to discuss that one first. If I'm putting liquidity, I don't necessarily know anything around DeFi. I have a lot of money. So my voice is going to be the largest, even though maybe I'm not active. Maybe I haven't earned it. I'm never talking to anybody. I took my inheritance, put it in the protocol, and then,
For sure, right? And it is still a form of plutocracy, right? Like you're still giving, power to the richest members of the system as well. But I think like that's also where, it's really important to differentiate what kind of decisions you're making, right? I think if you're saying, what features do you want us to build at this protocol? It's probably good to get as many voices in there as possible, right? And it probably is good to say, hey, the people who are using us the most, maybe they should have the greatest say because, like, they're our prime users for like what we're building, right? And you could also make the opposite case. You could say, actually, we're keeping out a bunch of people who aren't using us because we haven't built these features. So let's try to, prioritize people who aren't using us because those are the markets we need to reach, right? There's lots of different ways you could claim it, but I think like generally it's good to get as many voices as possible in that kind of decision. If you're making like, a hefty decision about how you diversify your treasury and like what the timeline is for that and what the vesting schedule is, right? And like what kind of interest you're looking at and what the risk ratio is, like all of that stuff, you probably don't want as many people participating in that process as possible. You probably want a few people who are like paid delegates who are like have worked in finance for years, understand the implications of this, are doing the work of modeling this out in spreadsheets, right? And so, I do think like elections, to say something that is like, it's so weird this is controversial, having elections and delegates is like, it makes a lot of sense. Like you should hire experts in these rooms who have these expertise and experiences and have devoted years to it. And in that case, I think it might be fair to say, okay, the person who's provided a lot of liquidity gets a lot of say over who the expert is, but they don't get to be the expert themselves, right? Like we don't want them just having that power to make that decision too. But I think, Dean, what you're really getting at is like long term, what really matters here is reputation. Like the most important thing long term is that like building reputation systems about who is providing value to communities and who do we actually want to reward with power because of the value they've provided in the past as well. And financial value is like is sure that can be important for a DeFi protocol, like that is a form of value you provided, but it's maybe a minor one and it's a fairly rote fungible one compared to the kind of value of good ideas, right? And so I think that's really a driving thesis for what we're building too, is that when you take this on-chain data about who has won in these contests, who's contributed valuable ideas that their community has appreciated and rewarded, you're getting this incredible kind of like social graph and reputational graph of who has been valuable to these communities in a way that you can reward later, and then even give them more governance power through these contests in the future as well. So like 100%, I do think like we can't really
I
solve
love
these
the
problems
answer.
until we move to this world where reputation's more powerful than cash, right? Like that is the ultimate answer here.
Yeah, and I think that, I've come to the same conclusion around elections. Like, I think that they're a good thing.
Yeah.
You need to be able to have subject matter experts. I don't want to bounce off topics too much, but I am curious, what was this moment where you realized tokenless governance probably doesn't work? Like, what was there has to be like,
It really was like at the moment where I realized we didn't need it. Like it was a conversation like at the beginning of the year, going into DAO camp where talking to engineers and they're like, you don't need tokens to do voting. And I was like, what are you talking about? I've built a voting platform based on tokens for the past year. And they're like, no, like, my co-founder Sean, who's technical and 100 times the genius I am, is like explaining this to me. Like, no, we don't actually need this. Like, if you put this into a smart contract as a Merkle tree, then you just check against those addresses and then people can vote with that. Like, the token is just a data wrapper that we have used because it was the easiest data wrapper we could get and it was one that was easy to financialize. But there's plenty of other ways you can do on-chain voting without a token. And I'd just taken it for granted because no one had ever done it. No one had ever done tokenless, voting systems. Every single voting system that's been devised in crypto is based on tokens. And so that blew my mind. And I thought, and then I started working backwards to say, okay, if we don't need this thing, then like on a technical level, like do we need it on an ideological level? And the answer is just no. Like the only reason it's there is to pump bags, right? like, uh, in most communities. There are exceptions, right? Like proof of stake, economic security, like stuff like that. Yes, tokens matter a lot. There are reasons to have them. Membership, if you just want to like have minimum membership that is as like almost an investable membership, although there's legality around that, it's a cool idea to have tokens too. If you want to create country clubs, tokens are cool. But like, for most communities, it's really, really, I think, personally hard to justify.
Is there a world where a market is created for those addresses where instead of selling your token or selling your NFT or you're gonna have to sell your account, like you had an account market in Bitcoin talk? Like, isn't anything kind of ending in as something that we can market and we can create a market around it, even if it's not a token? Because is NFT governance a token governance? Is a soul-bound token a non-movable token, a token which you cannot sell?
Right.
Like,
Right, but if you sell your account, it has all the voting power based on the amount of ETH you've deposited, then you're selling an account with a ton of ETH, Like
yeah,
there's
you sell it at market price of ETH plus a premium, of course.
yeah, plus a premium for the amount of governance power that it's accrued over time, right? And yeah, and you could try to sell off that account for your total amount of ETH plus the governance power. Yeah, you might be able to get away with that. But right. And then the question is, can we check who logged in and who got this, etc. Did we materially see a change in their record? But I think like, when people are using accounts right now, we're in a world where people are incentivized to create as many accounts as possible. Right? Like the friction of creating a new account is totally fine. So if you create a bot and then someone identifies you as a bot and bans you forever and never lets you perform another action on chain, it doesn't matter to you because it's so easy to create another bot, right? As well. But I think we're gonna like the other thing about reputation is that it forces a consolidation into at least a few accounts that you want to have. Maybe you want to have more than one, but I don't think you want to have that many because like the reputation you can accrue from one account, right, through all the things you've done across all of these different platforms and the interoperability between them, like that's going to be something that's like really meaningful to you. And so, yeah, you might give off that, account plus the premium for the governance in this one protocol, but if, you're incentivized to create reputation in that account for many protocols and as well, like I don't know how many people are going to want to like spend years developing a meaningful reputation for themselves based on like valuable actions and then just lose their identity and sell their identity off completely. It's like selling your passport. It's like you're now citizenless and you have nothing. So, when you could keep accruing value to that account. So I hear that short term, but I do think like reputation is also really important to create a consolidation into like specific wallets as well.
Yeah, I really like your answer because it kind of agrees with what I have in my mind when like even having negative reputation is better than having no reputation. Like I think a reputation model
Totally.
for it to work is you shouldn't give me ever an incentive to throw out my passport and try to create a new one,
Yes. Well,
even
and
if
the negative
I've done something wrong.
The example I always give is like woke DAO, versus incel DAO. And it's like if you have positive reputation in woke DAO, incel DAO probably hates you. And if you have positive reputation in incel DAO, woke DAO probably hates you. And so it's like, yeah, your negative reputation is actually really valuable because it correlates to a positive reputation somewhere else. Right? And that's really meaningful to have. It helps you identify who you want to be with and who you don't want to be with as well. That's useful.
I think you answer the that reputation issue in a very, it's an anecdotal way to answer it, right? That someone values the negative reputation, but like,
Yeah.
let's say in the context of, we're all working together and, you stole some money.
Yeah.
Like, we're all going to agree that in every community, we're like, other than the thieves community, which is like, oh, this guy's great at stealing money. Most communities are going to be like, okay, this guy stole money.
But what is like every Fast and Furious movie? It's like they always go and they find, that guy who's in jail because he's like a thief, but he's the greatest, he knows how to crack a safe better than anyone else in the world. And it's like, yeah, he's hearted and he's an asshole, but he's worth it, he's that good. Like I think like even there you're gonna there will be the deep state DAO that is like, yeah, let's recruit this guy, like we'll spare him jail time, but he's gonna become like a deep informer for us, like because he knows how to hack the system.
Like, so
NSA, he'll go work for the NSA, right? Like,
there is no action. I mean, I'll go along with you on this. Is there no action that you're like, I mean, I don't know.
It's white hat DAO, black hat DAO. It's those two DAOs, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to go to the extremes,
There's
I don't know
also
what.
Thieves DAO. Thieves DAO is amazing DAO. Yeah, they're the only ones making money in this market. It's the most successful DAO there is. Yeah. What better way to join? Yeah, I know what you mean. So some metrics of reputation are more universal than others. Let's put it that way. But I
Yeah,
don't know that there's any metric that's 100% universal either. You can be a
right. And there's
Satanist
probably
and
not one
99%
that's
of religions
100%.
hate you, but Satanists still love you, right?
But there, I want to go back to what Chris mentioned, which is you never want to have a reputation system where having no reputation
Yeah.
is more valuable than
That's
having perceived
and
bad reputation.
and you don't probably want to have a world where your financial reputation is more important than your social reputation as well. Like obviously financial reputation is really important for understanding, can we underwrite this person for a mortgage? Do we want them participating in our DeFi protocol? Do we want them staking a validator? That kind of thing. But even those things are social in some ways. They're saying, can we trust them? Like, are they actually going to stick around, right? And so I think, long term, if we're just creating systems based on like allotting power to how rich somebody is, like that might be okay for DeFi protocol, but that's not okay for building sustainable communities, elsewhere. And so I do think it's really important to have the social piece because that's a trust piece as well, to say that you can be trusted not just as a friend, but in terms of what you do financially too.
So the answer really is that look, it goes back to what you said about the Fast and Furious. Even if you've
Yeah.
done something bad, somebody's going to value that,
Yeah.
and and I guess protocols will have to start not allowing day zero accounts to interact with them. Like it'll become a social contract across multiple protocols that's like, you're at day zero. Fuck off.
Right. Right. Totally. And I mean, it's like, yeah, you don't hire somebody for a job who's never, they didn't graduate first grade. Like they just came out of the womb and they're applying and they have no record, right? Like, there needs to be these systems to build up reputation too, I think, that matter. And so that's one hope with the contest that we're building is like you can only win a contest if you contribute something valuable that is voted on. And every vote is a form of attestation, right? If you participate in a hackathon, Vitalik votes for you, that's an attestation, right? And it doesn't matter whether you win, you have that on-chain attestation. And you don't need an NFT badge for that. You don't need an SBT. Like you have this on-chain credential that you provided value to this community and someone else saw value in it as well.
So we have a community and we've also been part of, a few joke races before.
Amazing. Yeah.
I was unlucky. I could never collude well enough. Even though,
You got
like once I got first, and I'm like, fuck, I got first. And another time I got like third. It's always at the last second.
For anyone listening, Dean's referring to the original version of Jokerace, which is, as I said, a tool for launching contests. But the original where this all started was a contest that at that point was called the Jokerace, is now called the Joke Council Race, to compete over bad jokes, and you only win if you get second place. And so if too many people vote for you, you lose, and if too few people vote for you, you lose. And so it forces everyone to kind of have to collaborate to collude and figure out like a strategy together to try to get their entry to second place so that they can win.
Yeah. So my experience, it was fun. Like the first 2 weeks I was doing it was fun. Like getting into it, seeing the changes in real time. Like what I loved is that the most there was a huge amount of engagement from me in those last 10 minutes from everyone, where who's going to change, and then, I wasn't able to get the transaction through.
Yeah, you got to build team. Got to build team.
Yeah, but at the time there was probably like 6 whale holders and then a bunch of us minnows who could never collude to equal 1 whale.
You got to.
It is what it is. It was an experiment.
Yeah.
So
See my friend, I'm the whale's friend here.
You gotta find the whale's friend.
Gotta find the whale's friend. Yeah.
So if I was part of it then, am I part of something today? I haven't checked Joke since.
Yeah. So we're actually talking about 2 separate things. So one is this weekly contest called the Joke Council race for bad jokes. And so that's actually now run by the Joke Council, which is I'm disaffiliated from. We follow the traditional structure where you have a labs entity that is a centralized company that creates tools, and then you have a decentralized DAO community, with its own token that is disaffiliated. And so I can't officially speak to it anymore, actually. But yeah, they manage that. What I'm building right on my side is Jokerace as a platform for anybody to be able to launch contests. So like within the past week we had, Aragon, Gitcoin, Arbitrum, Mantle, like all creating contests through us. And for those contests, usually first place wins. It's usually a little bit more boring, than the stupid game I created. It's actually based on trying to get to first. And those are contests of all different
kinds.
How are
they? Yeah, I was going to ask that. Like, are you recommending like certain templates of contests, or like what do you see most people doing? Are they using a templated version, or are they creating their own? What's the most like interesting contest type you've seen?
So there's really just a very few variables within a contest. One is how long the submission period is. One is how long the voting period is, right? One is the prompt that you give. One is the allow list for who can submit. One is the allow list for who can vote. And then finally, if you want to add rewards, you can add a rewards pool on and divide that proportionately to winners, however you decide. So those are really the variables, right? It's really who's allow listed, how long does this run, and what rewards do we have? And it's really, you just break it down, it's really those 3 kind of areas are the main ones. So it's interesting because like in terms of duration, we have a default on our site for 1 week for submissions, 1 week for voting. We found that to be very successful to give communities a lot of time to be able to reach out to members, get them to participate, tweet about it every day, get them retweeting about it, and build momentum over the course of a week. But I will say we've also seen contests be really successful that do the opposite, where they run a contest for like 30 minutes or an hour on a live call, and it's like the first 40 minutes is submissions, and they're like all submitting their best ideas from the call, and the last 20 minutes they're all voting on their favorite ideas, right? And so, it's interesting because you could have one really good template, but the opposite template might be even better, right? And so that's one way I think that people play with it. In terms of, allow lists, usually people are leaving it open for anyone to vote. The risk there is getting botted. And so that's a lot of what our work right now is building a lot more bot protections as well, if you do decide to let anyone submit. But you could also allow list that to prevent bots and just open that up to your community if you want. That really depends on the specific use case and what they're looking for. If you're looking for engagement and you want to go viral and you want as many people participating and sharing this as possible, you're going to set up your contest in a very different way than if you're really looking for like the highest quality submissions. Because if you want engagement, you want to make it as easy as possible for people to submit. And if you want really, really high quality, you probably want to make it as hard as possible for people to submit. Like you wanted them to have to go through, a lot of hurdles, prove themselves, show that they're, deep in the product, write something that's, really long and really meaningful, etc. And so again, it depends on the different goals of the different communities, like what they're looking for. And as I said, when you can decide who submits and who votes, you could have just a small core team submit and a whole community votes, which is like DAO governance. You could have a whole community submit and then just a core team votes, and then that's a hackathon or a grant. You could have a subset of one or the other do it, or you could have totally separate communities do it. And so that's where you really get to experiment with like a lot of different structures. And that's what I think has been really fun, as much as there's kind of templates for engagement, there are no templates for like who you want to allow list, and that lets anybody create permission and create communities any way they want. And that's what's really exciting is people are creating communities in really different ways, and we're getting a whole diversity of different types of communities that are flourishing through us, and that's really, really cool to see.
Are there any communities that, despite having, like you already mentioned some, but I would like to see how this goes. Like, there are communities that already have a token, and they already have a governance structure, and maybe they're already participating in some kind of in some DAO tooling, maybe some treasury management, something. What is their impression when they start thinking about tokenless governance? Does it hinder their ability to reward maybe the participants? Does it change the approach they have with their tokenomics? Do you expect a shift in tokenomics if we kind of remove governance from tokens?
And again, I think what I'm excited by is that we built this toolkit for people to design however they want. So if you want to design with a token, you still can. Like, it's not as though you can't have a token through us. What you would do is you would just take the allow list of your token holders, and then those are the people who participate. And actually, if you think about that, that's also an advantage, because now you can be running your governance on any cheap L2 instead of doing it on Ethereum mainnet where it would cost you, hundreds of dollars. So, anybody using our system, even if they have their token on something like Ethereum mainnet, they can still be running their governance on another chain for cheap, right? But then, I think it gets down to these other questions of like, well, what if it's token time duration the token is held, right? And does that change things? Or even the example I gave of the DeFi protocol that's going to be using us and they're going to be doing, based on deposits, they still will require you to have like 1,000 tokens to be able to participate. So you cannot be part of that system if you don't have 1,000 tokens. So there still is like a membership, requirement for the token, but the token is not a basis of power within the community. It just means that you have to have owned it in order to get membership to then participate
really cool
based
approach.
on other metrics.
I really like it, and we need to kind of experiment in there. Like I can't imagine what kind of scenarios you've seen with communities trying to go from token governance to tokenless governance. What transition do you think a community needs to do? Like, what is that a community needs to change in order to transition to a tokenless governance? I'm very also interested because I know, like maybe you know that community as well. that has a token and would love to experiment with a tokenless model.
Yeah, I don't know that they need to transition to fully tokenless either. Like, you know, so like the DeFi protocol I mentioned, right? They have they require you to have 1,000 of their token to participate, but the token's not the basis of your voting power, right? It's not. It's just a membership, and so it's basically like, yeah, you buy 1,000 tokens, that's your membership, and you know, if more and more people do this and the DeFi protocol takes off, the token price, you know, will probably go up over time, but it's not being used in correlation to the actual power that you have within the community. FWB probably really pioneered that, right? And so yeah, I think you can do stuff like that where the token is a membership, but it's not a basis of power, right? Stuff like that is interesting, and still should have, you know, value accrual, right, for a token potentially as well. So yeah, there's lots of other options. You could also do the things I was talking about before of like, you know, it's not just your token, but how long you've held it, or it's your token times your deposits, you know. So there's other ways that you can just start playing with governance, where even if you want to include the token, you can do it in all of these other ways as well. I don't know that they have to totally get rid of the token necessarily if they don't want to.
It's
I wonder if
sorry, because I had in mind about a community where it has a token just for governance. They don't have a token in order to.
Right,
like
fair
the
chain.
only reason. Yeah.
Parachain, like Parachain, right, is going to have multiple tokens. One of those tokens will, I think, I'm not, based on what I've read, I'm not in on the project, right, and I think like one of those will be like a governance token. I think the issue for me with when you have a governance token, that's like the basis of how much votes you have. There's two issues. One is that you're still making voting the basis of power rather than submissions the basis of power, which I find slightly problematic. It's like voting isn't really that meaningful a form of expression, especially in small communities. It should be your ability to shape proposals, share creative input, right? Help generate, you know, creative content, etc. So there's that piece. I think the other piece is that we focus a lot on fair token distribution and making sure tokens is not going to airdrop farmers and it's going to people who have actually contributed value and who have been meaningful. And that's cool, but it's like that's also a temporary solution because over time those tokens will eventually sell off to the richest people who buy them out. And once people have gotten the token, they're going to be less incentivized to continue doing that kind of creative work as well, right? And so like those kinds of systems, like that's where I get a little skeptical that you just want to have a governance token, because even then you're financializing governance in a way that is, you know, will end up being plutocratic, even if your distribution mechanism is totally fair. It just buys you time, basically, before you end up looking like every other community does.
Is tokenless governance, does it solve the issue of voting apathy? When, you know, over time you have less and less interest by voters to come and vote and contribute to the project.
Yeah, totally. I mean, right, like, it's interesting, like, you know, and Uniswap and Andreessen owns, like, I don't know, some gigantic share of tokens, right? I forget how much it is, but it's phenomenally huge. And the thing is, Andreessen is really, I think, you know, dedicated not to abuse that power. Like, they know if they ever voted one way with all those tokens, it would look really bad. Like, it would be so clear that they were throwing the vote, no one else had any say. And so Andreessen will not do that. Like, Andreessen deliberately will delegate to people with different perspectives in order to prevent themselves from ever swinging a vote because they know it actually hurt the community to do so. But it still doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because people see that Andreessen has all that power and then think, I don't have any. Even though Andreessen's not going to abuse it, you know, everyone is still going to look and say, this is hopeless for me. Like, why would I even bother when A16Z can do whatever they want, right? And so, you know, I do think, you know, voter apathy I have mixed feelings about. I don't, you know, it's what we talked about before. Do you want any random token holder making big financial decisions? Like, is that really the goal? Like, if anything, we should make some of these decisions harder to make. But to the extent that people don't want to get involved, yeah, I think they like look at the plutocracy and they see that they can't have any say and there's no ability for them to actually contribute meaningfully, and it puts them off. Like, why would you bother voting in these systems where it's like you're voting against something that you now have a public record of you voting no against somebody who you might want to work with in the future, and your vote didn't even matter in the first place, right? Like, that's even like why Jokerace is designed where it's like ranked choice voting, where you can only vote on things, you can only put your votes towards things you like. You can't ever vote against something, right? And so that really means that, like, you're never voting no on something. You're just voting yes for something else instead, and it really lets you prioritize hopefully much better.
Yeah, I so agree on this one. I've said it to Dean many times that going on chain is like going to war. Like anything you say, you're gonna have to campaign, and anybody who votes no is going to drop in your trust list, maybe, or in your friends list. Expect your friends to support you, but
People get angry about this when I was saying like collusion is the basis for winning, and it's like no, we need a fair system where your vote is measured objectively, and no one can tamper with it. Like we all have these ideals from the countries we live in, but the countries we live in were designed for 300 million people to all coordinate, and the best way for that to happen is for them not to coordinate. It's for them not to come together, negotiate, compromise, discuss. Right? It's for them to just register an individual vote, and that's it. And when you have these communities of 100 people, like not only can you unlock them to have like more creative contribution in how they participate, but you can unlock them to actually compromise, negotiate on votes a lot in ways that should build social relationships, get them discussing it, thinking about the implications, listening to each other. Like these are not bad things, when you can do all of that. And so, yeah, people get angry like, oh, it's not enough just to have a good idea. You have to go campaign for it. But like that's, that means that you're building social consensus and getting people excited about your idea in a way that will get them on board to support it in the future and build social relationships to continue working with them as well, right? Like is that really a bad thing? Is it really a bad thing that you have to go out and campaign and market? It definitely is a necessity of the system no matter what, and one that we need to get more and more used to because we're not from the kind of voting systems we've experienced at national scale.
I think this ties very well in the idea that where like not everything needs to go on chain. Maybe you don't need to have the consensus of everybody in the community in order to pass a small decision, maybe a budget of $1,000 or $200, something small, and maybe you need to do like 20 of those proposals. Having to campaign for 20 proposals is something you better not do. I prefer to put them through my pocket. So it has happened. This is how it is. But this ties so well into it. Like you can have this adjustable kind of if the proposal requires more of X amount of is going to move more than X amount of money, then everybody needs to need a higher quorum. So I think this ties well with tokenless governance, since you can actually play better with quorum. You can watch. You can kind of kick out inactive users, which you can't do in token governance most of the times. So I think it improves on the model. I've taken the pill. I'm with you here. Tokenless governance. Like I'm trying to find reasons not to. Yeah, I'm really struggling to find reasons why would you need tokens? It just creates issues.
Yeah, we recently, because as I said, we've got our own token and we've got a DAO that we run. We recently realized you can never have a fixed supply token governance. Inevitably, you're gonna have to continuously vote down your quorum to where you're just like, okay, I guess we're making a new token, and then it's like, okay, what are we even doing here? So we've come to that conclusion. Like the only way token governance works is if the token itself is dynamic, where it can be clawed back and then and you might as well be using allow lists at that point. So I think that we're philosophically on the same page. My bigger question is, what has to happen for us to start onboarding millions of people into DAOs, into tokenized or tokenless communities?
Yeah. A bunch of things have to happen. I think about it as an incentive issue, above all. Like, yes, there's a UI UX issue, right? Like, yes, it's challenging to get a wallet and to know that this thing is your identity, and then to think that the wallet that is holding all of your money is also going to be this thing you have to be signing all of the time to use for any social interaction. Like this is aggravating for users, right? This is not as easy as like getting a modem and connecting to the internet in the 90s. It's like you're putting all of your finances at stake every time you log into a service, right? So UI UX challenges I do think are real. At the same time, we've seen over and over again, if the incentives are strong enough, people will overcome those. Like if the incentives are in place, like you will have a bunch, like, Axie in 2020, 2021 was like you had to create 2 wallets, learn how to use both of them, be able to buy, into the system before you could even use it. And you had people all across the Philippines, right, doing this. So as much as UI UX is definitely an important piece of all of this, as much as like getting better wallets, getting people custom wallets, letting people know they can have a wallet for social activity that's different from a wallet for financial custody, like as much as all that education is really important, I do think it comes down to incentives, and it comes down to sustainable incentives, right? It can't, Ponzi's are good for 6 months, but we need something more than that. So I'm a big believer that there's really 3 types of incentives. Financial is one. I do think that's the basis of, financial blockchains. There's a lot of really cool things that you can build with that. I think what we're doing with rewards, hopefully qualifies. And I think that is what draws people in. Like finance is the best acquisition tool you have, especially against Web 2, which doesn't have it. But it's a bad retention tool. Like it's a good acquisition tool to get people in with money. It's a bad retention tool because then you're just getting mercenaries. And so then you really need reputation. And I personally don't think any of this unlocks until we have better reputation systems in place. Both to be able to create the kind of communities where you can find the people you want to be part of them. You can say, hey, I'm creating a community, I'm creating my Artie Shaw community because I love 1930s jazz clarinet. And so I just want to create this community for, other 1930s jazz clarinet enthusiasts. It's like, if we have a reputation system where you can find all of those 1930s jazz clarinet enthusiasts, you can create a community around them much more easily than you ever could, right? And so, even in that way, like social graphs, reputation, all of that is really, really important. But it's also really important as a basis for how we're allotting power too within these systems. That you're not just giving financial power to the airdrop farmers who are the worst people to have it, but you're actually giving it to the people who have contributed value and have built valuable reputation too. And so I personally think reputation is what unlocks the next bull cycle. I think reputation is what unlocks crypto. I hope what we're building is a small piece of that. But it can't just be us, right? And it needs to be much more than that. And yeah, that's really where my hope is. And finally, there's a social incentive piece too. Like if it's fun for people to use this with each other, that's still something we haven't unlocked. Like as much as we talk all the time about coordination games and communities and like collective, finance and like buying the constitution together, crypto's been shockingly single player. It has not been nearly as social as most of the games that you could be playing in Web 2. So those are the pieces I think we need.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the reputation being a huge unlock for us. My last question is around friend tech.
Yeah. What's the question?
I'll just leave it at that. How do you feel about friend tech? Is that part of the future? Is that a Ponzi? Is that something we've done before, but a better implementation?
Yeah. All of the above. I think like buying and selling your friends, or buying a share representing your friend, seeing what your friends are worth financially is a gimmick. It is fun for a week to be able to find the number of how valuable your friend is, the same way as it would be to like see if they're hot or not. And then you have that number where they are, and it's pretty boring because there's no qualitative game being played. There's only a quantitative game being played, and it's a novelty, like how much your friend is worth, right? And so we see this over and over again. There's BitClout, right, and now FriendTech, and like this happens that financialize your friends is like this really great gimmick that is like a really fun 1 week game to play, but there isn't much beyond that. And for me, the danger with FriendTech is that they have refused composability so far. If those shares could get you access to other services, like if you buy those shares and that lets you, that's a basis for an allow list to participate in a community, right? That is like, letting you message is pretty cool, but it could be like a lot more than that, right? It could be much more than just messaging. It could be participating in these contests. It could be, getting roles within a community. It could be getting, screen time with a person, like services that they offer you as well. Like then you can build something that's much bigger than OnlyFans, because it's not, it could be any sort of service, right, offered based on like your ability to buy these shares, and they don't even need to build that themselves. They just need to make themselves composable so that people can build services on top of them that give them access to that. So I wrote a piece last week called the Proto App Thesis, basically saying the apps that win are the ones that people can build on top of, and then they can integrate into their front end. Friend tech could be this really amazing thing for anybody to build on top with services for what their shares enable, and then friend tech could just incorporate it in their front end. And what they did is the exact opposite of that. They built something where the key shares are not even on chain, right? It is just like a private data thing for their own points, and instead of embracing composability, they've created a closed loop system, and I think they hit the hype cycle. It's going to be very hard to recreate that, and it's hard for me to get excited about in its current form, but it's easy for me to get excited about it in terms of what it could be, and maybe still will be if they pivot some. But there's been a lot that's really exciting about it, especially as an app builder, just in terms of what they did with PWAs, right? Privy, like having it, on your phone, like lots of really cool UX stuff that they did that I absolutely love. But the lack of composability, I think, is a killer for what they're doing.
I have to ask, what would it take to see Jokerace being SVM compatible? I mean, even Visa has joined the party. What happens, to our other EVM friends?
SVM is very hard right now. I wouldn't roll it off the table totally long term. So the structure for how Jokerace works is we're technically a no-code smart contract deployment tool. So when you're creating a contest, you're setting the parameters for a smart contract that you're deploying to any chain you're connected on in your wallet, as long as it's EVM compatible. I personally would love to see some like EVM compatible Solana projects. Like I'm very bullish on Solana, but I do think EVM just has the network effects. Working in Solidity is really easy. Like I know Eclipse is starting to move in this direction a little bit, and I really hope they like create some chains, right? Where it's like, you can work in EVM on Solana. For me, be a dream. I would love to see that. SVM is hard because it just means recreating the whole product from scratch, right? It essentially means like, going like it's a totally different language, etc. And I'm not going to say like, it can't be done. Of course it can be done, but right now when it takes us 2 minutes to add any new chain that's EVM compatible, it's going to take us months to be able to add any chain that isn't. And so that's the trade-off, because that's months away from being able to build out the features, etc. For what we're doing. So I love Solana personally, and like I'm a Solana bull. Like I would love to see this happen too, but it's very hard with our current architecture.
There are plenty of projects that have they're working on something, on some tooling like Neon Labs and a couple more. But
Neon's
they've been there for like 2.5 years saying that they'll deliver. They'll deliver.
That also.
Everybody starts very excited, and I think they all crash into a wall at some point. But I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. Solana needs to connect with the wider ecosystem, and it has lots to offer in terms of non-financial transactions. And yes, the liquidity is in EVM, but transactional speed and how cheap it is. And it's a good bunch of degens as well. Why not?
Exactly.
Also get invited to the party.
I could go on about all the reasons I like Solana. Yeah, so I would love to see that happen for sure. Solana, for me, we think there's this debate between composability and scalability, which used to be the case, and I don't actually think that's really true anymore. I think both Solana and modular stacks are scalable. That's not really the issue. The trade-off is composability and sovereignty, and there's the reason to build modular, I think, is like sovereignty, like being able to have a game with your own chain, where you can set freemium gas prices for new users, right? Stuff like that. You can determine the block space however you want, right? Like, or block size however you want in order to, have faster transactions for certain use cases. Like that sovereignty is really important when you're creating like verticalized products for really specific use cases. But when you're creating a universal system for everybody to use, I think composability is the more important piece, especially atomic composability. People in the modular stack will tell you can get atomic composability, but Solana is really right now the best project for atomic composability. So your ability to be able to transact anywhere in the world, remit cheaply, scale to, millions of transactions per second, like long term, and just have like a universal financial rail, I think like Solana's cleaning up there. I think it's really good for that. I think where I'm building is on the social side, and I think that's probably where the Ethereum ecosystem might end up winning because this of the sovereignty side of what you can do. Ethereum is basically just taking Cosmos's roadmap. Like Ethereum is basically just Cosmos at this point, and Cosmos is increasing Ethereum too as all their new chains are EVM as well. And so those have kind of merged, I think, into like the sovereignty thesis. And I think I love both these theses. I think they're both great. I think they're also really compatible with each other, and really complementary. And so I always just get really frustrated when I see these two. It's really, yeah, when you see sides attacking each other, like if you're really bullish on sovereignty, you should also be really bullish on composability because you need both. They're going to complement each other. So yeah, that's my case for why I quite like Solana.